Hey everyone, a video here on HamRadioConcepts with the Boxchip S700A. I'm still using this as a daily for my phone. And we're going to touch on now the firmware update and programming of this radio. So when this radio first came out, there really wasn't any way to program it from the computer. Their software wasn't that good. And I gave them a couple tips, and a couple other people have chipped in, and they actually have a working software now for making a code plug in this thing. And I'll show you exactly how that works. And I'm going to update the firmware too, because again, this unit is still in sort of like a developmental stage. So they fixed some bugs that I reported and some others reported. And now I'm going to show you, this is a MediaTek device. If you're familiar with Android and ROMs, this process is the same for a lot of other MediaTek units to upgrade the actual ROM on here. So let's show you how this is going to work, what you're going to do, where to get the software, and how to program it using the BPS software at this video, currently version 1.7. So here is the website. It's in the description under my video as a link to get to this website. And on here has your BPS programming for DMR to program the radio memories, firmware instructions and such, and the drivers or the flash tools and the drivers and such. So what you're going to know is right now the BPS is your programming software. Boxchip programming software, I guess, is what BPS stands for. And currently at this video, it's 1.7. So I started this at 1.2, then I tried 1.3, 1.4. They kept sending different versions. And finally, after a few fixes and a few comments, they got one that resembles a working programming software. Now, there may be additions after that, but at the time, you're looking at 1.7. And then there's instructions here, and I'll try to walk you through this easier. It's pretty easy on here, but your firmware, the newest device firmware. Now, when you download this, look at, in the file name will tell you, it will tell you the date. Like if I click here, okay, so this is, right here is the date, October 17th, 2018 is the date. But you would think, I mean, they do have, I mean, this came out 2 days ago, so they put it right up on the site. But for those who are wondering, I already downloaded this. For those who are wondering, if you want to know about the current firmware, if it's not on here or what firmware you downloaded, it's in the actual title of the firmware for the date. Now, so you'll need the programming software up here. You'll need the firmware and the flash tool for Windows 10 is what I'm using, or if you need it for Windows 7, and a USB driver if you need that. So you download these three things: the flash tool, the firmware, and the BPS. So once you downloaded the firmware and the flash tool, the firmware is about 750 megabytes roughly. You're going to extract this or unzip it to a folder you know where it is on your computer. So I named mine Boxchip Firmware. Here is the firmware unzipped, okay? And there's a couple files that are going to be needed in here when you choose on your flash tool. I'll show you now. So keep that where you know where it is. And your flash tool, which I put in the folder called Flash Tool. Okay, so when you first open it up, you're going to have nothing in here. You're going to first click on Scatter Loading, and you're going to pick the scatter file in the folder where you unzipped all the firmware. Okay, so you unzip it to a Boxchip Firmware folder. You click Scatter. You're going to pick this scatter file right here, and what that does is it tells everything in the software here, it tells it where it's going to put what piece of firmware. You know, there's a boot section, there's a preloader, there's a recovery, there's the logo and all that stuff. So this is what assigns where it's going. And then you want to click Download Agent. And I will warn you that when you do this, you're going to lose everything on your device. This is a complete firmware update. So it's going to erase the device back to factory. So if you have things important to you, save them, back them up, it's going to wipe it out. So on the download agent, you want to click this, the MTK all-in-one bin here. That's for the download agent. Now, last thing is this over here, you want to click firmware upgrade. Okay? So again, we have the download agent, the scatter file, and firmware upgrade. you're going to take the battery off of this thing. It comes off like this. Okay. Take the battery off. Now what's going to happen is your USB-C connector, which I took a lot of grief for. Yes, I didn't know that was called a USB-C. I apologize. Your USB-C is where the programming, the firmware goes in. Now, right now, the battery is out, but you're going to click download on the software, and you're going to plug the cable in. Once you plug this in, it's going to start downloading. So first, you're going to click download first. Now it's waiting for you to plug in your device. No battery, just plug in the cable. And you should see on the bottom, you heard that, and now it detects the phone and it's starting to download. And that's the way the MTK processes are, no battery in there. It just starts it up right in the, firmware upgrade mode. And now you can see here, download flash. And it takes about 3 minutes. And after that, you're going to get a success check or you're going to get a fail check. There is the download OK check, which means it's successfully completed. Now at this point, there should be nothing on your phone because it's not turned on. So what you're going to do is unplug the phone, and we're going to put the battery back in and turn it on like a normal phone. And at this point, it should be updated with the latest firmware. Remember, hold the power button here to turn it on. And the first time after you do a firmware update, it is going to take a little longer because it has to load the settings. So it's going to come up and say Android apps loading and spin. And then after 4, 5, 6 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. So don't turn it off if it seems like it's frozen. Just leave it. Eventually, it will come on. That's the first time. And then, so once this is finished, I'll show you the latest firmware that we're on. And then we'll go into programming software. And as I said, this is now a wiped out brand new phone. One thing you're going to want to do is you want to go to settings and you want to go down to about phone. Okay. Now you can see we are on the custom build down here. You can see there's the same build ROM that we just flashed to the device. But very important, you see the build number up top? You want to tap that 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's an Android thing that puts you into developer mode. So by tapping build number 7 times, you're kind of unlocking a hidden menu, right? Now that that's open, you can go back and you're going to see developer options here, which you didn't see before. Click on developer options and make sure you turn on USB debugging. Put that straight on camera for you, right here. USB debugging, turn that on. And that's going to help in the future and allow programming and all that. So don't play with anything else in there unless you know what you're doing. So that's USB debugging turned on. Now it's connected to the computer for the programming. Okay, so now you've downloaded the BPS software. You're ready to go. You can click on the little purple icon when you extract it. And you're going to see a software that looks really similar to a lot of other DMR programming devices, right? So this is version 1.7, and what you're going to see here, a couple things to note. If you see your number up here, the S700A model with the serial number, that means it's connected to the device. It can see the device. If you do not have this number up here, you will not be able to program this. Either you have a non-functioning USB port, you don't have USB debugging turned on, or the device is turned off. And there's 3 things that really could happen, unless you have maybe, some computers, somebody's using a Windows XP machine. I don't know. This is on Windows 10, and it's working. I did try this on Windows 7 on my little HP netbook, and it did work also. Now, if you don't see it, you can click search, and it might pull it up. So for the very first time, when you use this device, first time, if there's no programming file on the device, you can't read from it. Normally, like a Bofeng or a TYT, you can click read and it's going to come up with the factory defaults, but there is no factory default programming in this radio, okay? So what you want to do first is click write. And if you get a message like this, that means it just wrote a blank file to the device. Now you can click read, and it should automatically read that blank file. Now you got the blank file loaded, you got your serial number populated here. The data layout, the last program time. Now you're ready to edit. So what we can do is, and this is not a DMR programming tutorial by any means, but first, let's go ahead and click Install APK. Now this is going to install the latest DMR PTT app on the device, okay? And you should see messages that look like this. So it took the old one out, it put the new one in, and that's it. It just turned that unit on with the new app. So I guess their idea is you can get the latest PTT app with the latest program software. So it looks like if they come out with a new, BPS, maybe they put a new DMR app in there. So that's, right there, that installs it. In case you don't have that on your device, this will install it. Now, so we have that. We're connected. We have the new app on here. In the general settings, I'm going to name this KJ4YZI, and my ID, 3112887. And right here under password, I'm gonna just put a number 1. Now here's one thing that is a little weird. They put a password on here, and I'm not sure if you can put 0 and just make there's no password. So we're just gonna put 1. If it ever asks you for a password on the app, which hopefully we can get them to change that, it'll be whatever you put in here. So I'm just gonna put 1, okay? And I'll turn the squelch down to 2. So in contacts, we'll make a couple quick contacts. And again, there's more people that really get into DMR programming. I really don't want to answer a lot of questions on how to program because there are a lot of people out there that make some really in-depth DMR programming videos. So I'll show you just a couple on how easy this works. So we're going to delete a couple of these things that are in here from the factory just because I don't want them here. So we'll call this group 1. We'll add a group call. All right, we'll call group 1. We'll call this one, we're going to rename it to TAC 310 because I don't get on TAC 310 anymore. But there's TAC 310. Leave the IMEI blank. We'll go here and we'll rename this one TAC 311 because I've been on there before. All right. And the call is 311. So that's your call. If you want to make a private, you can go add an individual call. And I could name that came for MCK, and I don't know his ID, so whatever. We'll come up with like that. All right. So there's your making contacts. Now, if you go to zone, okay, so we're going to add a couple of digital DMR channels, and we'll have an analog here. So the first one we'll call analog. Let's see. We'll do 444.350, I think, is the frequency locally. That might not be it. Let's try this one. All right, 444.800, 449.800. All right, high power, 12.5 kilohertz wide, and that's channel A. We could rename that. We can go, let's call it that. Okay, and then digital. So we'll make one for a repeater. All right. The default contact. Oh, let's add another contact here. Let's call this one group rename. We'll call it Treasure Coast. Okay. And the Treasure Coast talk group is 31123. Some guys on there. So we have the K4CPJ analog machine, and then we have we'll call this one KJ4YZI. That's that frequency of that one. We'll call the default talk. The default talk group would be Treasure Coast on time slot B, color code 1. And then we'll call this one hotspot. We're gonna make a hotspot here. All right, that's my hotspot here, and the frequency of that is usually 435.000, 435.000. Low power because I'm always right next to it. And the default contact, we will call it TAC 311. So at this point right here, I have, we got to edit the receive groups here. So we'll put that in, and we'll put that in. Okay. So at this point, we have a couple channels in the zone 1. We have a couple contacts here, my ID and everything. And just simply, you can click Save As and save the file to Boxchip code plug if you want. All right. And then we can just hit write. and it's going to write it right back to the radio. That's it. Okay, so I can hear right there it's already receiving whatever frequency I just put it on. It's probably hearing my hotspot. So anyways, again, this is not a tutorial on how to program DMR. There are a lot of people out there, and I just, to answer it opens a lot of questions. My goal in this video is to show you how to upgrade the firmware, how to get and where to get the software, and how the software looks, so you can see, yes, you can program this with a USB cable and a standard program software that they made, Boxchip made, and it is working. Now, in the beginning, like I said, the version 1.2, 1.3, problems. It didn't have anything up here. You couldn't save it, read it, write it. So Boxchip listened to a few things I said. They did take a little bit of constructive criticism and upgrade it. So it's always good to know that they're listening for the improvements, because I am not the expert at DMR right here, okay? I am not the expert at anything. I don't claim to be. But you may have some interest or some criticism to say, hey, you know what? We use this in the field, or we want this option, or we need to adjust this. Tell them that's what you need. And on the Facebook group is a good way to definitely get, communications and everything with them. So I hope that answered the questions and enlightened you on how to program this. So thanks for watching, and 7.3 from KJ4YZI.